Before we get into today's episode, we did want to let you know that this deep dive contains some discussion of distressing themes, including sexual abuse. For help, you can reach out to 1-800-RESPECT on 1-800-737-732 or visit 1800respect.org.au. Good morning and welcome to the Daily Aus. It's Wednesday, the 22nd of April. I'm Emma Gillespie.
I'm Billi FitzSimons.
A missing 13-year-old, a body found in a car boot by chance, a matching tattoo, and a 21-year-old TikTok star with 22 million Spotify listeners potentially facing the death penalty. Today, we are going to explain the case against US singer David from the very beginning.
I have to admit that before I read about this story on TDA, I didn't know who David was.
Yep.
Do you want to just explain who he is for anyone like me who doesn't know him?
So fair, Billi. I'll be real with you. I didn't know who he was either, but he has a huge following and plenty of other younger, cooler people in the TDA office had heard of him. David, I should note, is spelt, his artist name is spelt D4vd. So it looks like David. He's a 21-year-old singer and TikToker, as you mentioned. He's from Texas. His real name is David Anthony Burke. Now, he rose to fame on social media in the early 2020s. That was through short clips of music of his that went viral. I'm sure you can imagine those kind of really short bursts of his songs that then crossed over into a full-blown recording and touring career. His music is kind of described as this blend of indie pop and alt R&B. But he's grown to such popularity that he amassed 22 million monthly listeners on Spotify. He has lots of young fans. His fan base is especially young because of the platform that he became famous on, TikTok. And he even performed at Coachella just last year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and so we're talking about him today because he's been charged with murder of a teenage victim. What do we need to know about this teenage victim?
So her name is Celeste Rivas Hernandez. She was a 13-year-old girl from Lake Elsinore. That's a town about 90 minutes southeast of LA. She was reported missing by her family in April 2024, so some time ago. Now, investigators pretty early on established a connection between the missing girl and the singer David.
Before her body was found.
Yes, before her body was found, exactly. So they were seen near her home in January 2024. They appeared on a Twitch live stream together in early 2024. And Celeste's brother even told NBC News at the time of her disappearance that she was on the way to see a movie with David the night that she went missing. So he would have been 19 at the time, and prosecutors alleged that David was engaging in repeated sexual contact with Celeste while she was under the age of 14, and that is one of the many charges he's now facing.
And so she went missing in 2024. There was a link between her and David, but nothing was confirmed in terms of whether or not he was involved in her disappearance.
Yep.
So it is, well, I guess it's not surprising if there was never a charge against him, and that's why he did perform at Coachella last year.
Well, when he performed at Coachella, we still didn't know what had happened to Celeste. Her body hadn't yet been found, but just a few months later, remains were discovered, honestly, by chance, kind of by accident, and it's all because an abandoned Tesla was impounded in Hollywood in September last year.
What does impounded mean?
So that just means that authorities seized a car. This happens regularly because, a car has been abandoned, or maybe it's been illegally parked or involved in a crime or allegedly involved in a crime. So there are a few different reasons why police or local authorities will seize a car. But in this case, this car was towed basically because it had just been sitting on the street, abandoned for some time. Locals reported it abandoned, and it was a Tesla that was registered in David's name. He had not reported the car stolen, but it was his car, so that, I guess, raised some alarm bells. It was impounded on the 5th of September, and 3 days later, police were called to the tow yard where the car was because workers reported a smell coming from the boot of the car. Now, inside, investigators discovered remains. At the time, they said the remains had been there for too long for them to identify, that the person who had died was not recognizable. But the body was later identified as Celeste Rivas Hernandez. She would have turned 15 the day before the body was found.
And so that was in September. We're now in April 2026.
Yeah.
After her body was found, because it was David's car, I imagine they immediately started investigating the potential link there.
Yeah, the day after her body was identified, his house was searched. Local media reported at the time that detectives were looking specifically for digital devices, that those devices might contain recordings linking Celeste and David, but also tracking devices that could place him at the location of where the car was dumped. It was also revealed by investigators that Celeste had a tattoo on her finger that read "shh," and that David had a matching tattoo. So we know that they had a relationship that was close enough for them to get matching tattoos. He was officially named a suspect in November. So it took a few months for investigators to come out with that information, although public discourse had already centered around David being a potential suspect. And 7 months after the body was found last week, David was finally arrested in connection with this murder.
Hey, I'm Sam. I'm the co-founder of TDA. With one button, 82% of you who aren't subscribed to this YouTube channel can change that and help Australian media. Click subscribe. Now back to the video.
And that's why we're talking about it this week, because although he was arrested last week, he was only charged a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
What were the specific charges against him?
So he's facing a number of offences. The first is murder in the first degree. Now, in the US, that just means willful or premeditated murder, as well as 1 count each of continuous sexual abuse of a child under the age of 14 and unlawful mutilation of human remains. Now, according to the LA District Attorney Nathan Hodgman, David is alleged to have killed Celeste on the 23rd of April 2025, so about a year after she went missing. He alleges that David dismembered her and placed her remains in 2 bags in the boot of his Tesla, where they stayed for 4 months before the car was towed and the smell was reported.
Goodness, it is a set of very disturbing allegations. Yeah. Do we know anything about his alleged motive?
Yeah, prosecutors laid out some more details at a press conference on Monday, and that was really interesting because previously the court had ordered a lot of the details around this case to be sealed. So, for example, the medical examiner could not disclose any information about the remains, and a lot of the investigation has been closed off to the public. There are sensitivity issues around any death involving a child, any sexual abuse or assault death, and in particular, any allegations against a person of public notoriety like David. So local prosecutors alleged that David killed Celeste after she threatened to expose their relationship and damage his music career. And that alleged motive is really important because it's why prosecutors have also included some special circumstances attached to the murder charge. Now, this is significant because those circumstances make it a potential death penalty case. Now, they include murder for financial gain. So this allegation is that the killing is connected to protecting his career and income. Lying in wait, which is a legal term basically meaning an alleged perpetrator conceals themselves or their intentions while they're waiting for the right moment to carry out an attack. And murdering a witness to prevent exposure. So on this special circumstance, prosecutors argue that Celeste herself was herself a witness of David's alleged sexual abuse, and they say he killed her to stop her from being able to give evidence against him.
God. And the fact that he is facing the death penalty, I think because we don't have the death penalty anymore here in Australia, it is always surprising to learn that it is still very much a penalty that many murder charges or people who commit murder, they do face the death penalty.
Yeah, in some US states it still exists. And I was actually surprised to learn it still exists in California.
Because California is a more progressive state.
Yeah, absolutely. It is certainly seen as a more progressive state. Politically, it's more progressive, but it does have the death penalty still. But California hasn't actually carried out the death penalty since 2006.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it has been some time. It exists, but it is very, very rarely used. When a murder charge does include the special circumstances like the ones that I mentioned, basically it means the prosecutors have the option to seek the death penalty, but it doesn't mean they will. So alternatively, they might be seeking life in prison for David without the possibility of parole, but they may indeed seek the death penalty. We don't know. They haven't made that clear yet.
But if they do, does it mean that David could be the first person in California to face the death penalty since 2006?
It would depend on if he is actually executed. So often in US states, we will see the death penalty charge, but then it can take decades for a person to actually end up being executed. There are many legal avenues of appeal in death penalty cases, and state governors can also intervene and order a stay of execution. So those cases can drag on for decades and decades, and in many cases, the offender can end up dying waiting on death row.
And I guess the first step before any of that happens is first there has to be a trial. I presume that, well, I don't know, is he pleading not guilty?
He is going to plead not guilty, so he's been held without bail since the arrest. When the charges were read out on Monday in LA, which was overnight Tuesday for us here, he did plead not guilty. David didn't speak during the hearing other than to enter that plea, but his legal team have released a statement saying, quote, "The actual evidence in this case will show that David did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez and that he was not the cause of her death." So they say they will vigorously defend him.
And what about Celeste's family? I mean, they've lost their daughter in this.
Yeah, their 13-year-old daughter. They haven't seen her since she was 13. Celeste's father did release a statement after the arrest last week saying, "Thank God, justice for Celeste." The family's lawyer has also spoken out and said that they are committed to ensuring Celeste's voice is heard and that her memory will be honoured throughout this process. The district attorney of LA said at his press conference this week, "To Celeste's loved ones, we will get the justice you seek and deserve."
And so what are the next steps here? I imagine he is now in jail awaiting trial.
So, he remains in custody without bail. The next phase will involve pre-trial hearings as both sides try to gather their evidence and build their arguments. The case will eventually move to a trial, but it's not yet clear how long that could take. Sometimes it takes months, sometimes it takes years. So we'll be waiting to see what happens there, and I'm sure a lot of people very interested to hear how the prosecution will move forward with the potential death penalty argument. And I do think an interesting angle that will be explored a lot over the coming months in discussions about this story will be the online safety argument. So the fact that these two allegedly were connected online, formed some sort of a relationship over the internet before meeting in person. The online safety of it all is expected to form a significant part of the case and coverage.
Thank you for taking us through that. We will keep everyone updated when there are any developments with that case. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Daily Aus. We'll be back later today with the evening headlines, but until then, we hope you have a good day.